Okay, good morning everyone. Thank you to Albert and the other organisers for inviting me here to talk to you this morning. Dark Sky Discovery is essentially an events and activities programme for the public and schools. It will be fully up and running in 2010 and hopefully running till 2012, but inspired by Year of Astronomy 2009. I'm here for two reasons. One is to talk to you and to be part of the conference, but also to talk particularly to people from Northern Ireland and Ireland about how this programme can take off here. And I've already had a really good meeting and helpful meeting yesterday with some people, but if anyone's local people would like to talk specifically about how this can happen here, then please talk to me, obviously. So a little bit about where I'm from. This is the Royal Observatory Edinburgh site. It's on the suburbs of Edinburgh, built in 1896, and it has an immense and fascinating heritage to the site because apart from the building, we have a collection of some of the most, well, pretty much all the important books in the history of astronomy. We have first editions by Copernicus, Galileo, Newton. I think it's one of the sort of three most important collections of its type in the world, 15,000 books. So we look after that at the site. But these days, there's no professional observing from the site, and we have about 150 staff, and the main activity is actually astronomical engineering. So we're building instruments and cameras for big telescopes, mountaintop telescopes, space telescopes. This red cylinder is actually a camera called Scuba, which was built actually in the late 90s. And was taken to this telescope in Hawaii, the James Clerk Maxwell Telescope. It's an infrared camera, and at its peak, the number of citations on papers that were coming from this instrument were bettered only by the Hubble Space Telescope. So the instruments built at the observatory are really world class. I get my arrows sorted. And this is an artist's impression of one of the discoveries made with Scuba. It's the star Vega, so it's a nearby star, and there were signs of exoplanets around Vega, a planetary system that was possibly quite similar to our own solar system. So that was a very important discovery with Scuba. The organisations on the site, well, we're actually owned by this organisation, the Science and Technology Facilities Council, which is a UK research council. We also have some University of Edinburgh scientists on site, and I run the visitor centre, which sort of runs the public and education programmes on behalf of the whole site. But I think from the point of view of this talk for you, perhaps the key thing is that we're coming at this whole thing from the research community and the way that we engage the public with the world of astronomy. That's our starting point. That's our driver for doing all this. The Dark Sky Discovery project is actually building on what we've been doing in Scotland, the Dark Sky Scotland programme, since very early 2007. So the programme was launched by a Deputy First Minister for Scotland and the Chief Scientific Advisor from Scotland. So from the very outset, there was big political support for what we've been doing. We've run over 50 events all around the country. There's not 50 on this map, but it shows you that they're spread in rural and urban areas of Scotland. So it's a very geographically diverse programme. Had about 6,000 people at the event so far. These are the types of comments that we've had from them. And an important part of the programme has been training workshops or other ways of... we've been talking to professional teachers and educators. And again, these are the types of comments that we've been having. So it's been really well received, and... first funding was for a year and a half, and we've maintained the momentum, and the project's still going strong. So these are the organisations involved, quite a mix of different partner organisations, and if you're not from Scotland or the UK, I'm sure it's going to be really confusing who they all are and what they do, but I'll just give you a little bit of an idea. Glasgow Science Centre... Sorry, even if you want... If you're from England, it's... Right, sure. Glasgow Science Centre, so I guess you all have some idea what a science centre is. You go there and there's lots of people really skilled at running demonstrations for families and that sort of activity. So we have people from Glasgow Science Centre doing that sort of thing at our events. Careers Scotland is a government agency that's interested in helping young people choose the right careers, and particularly interested in getting them involved in science and technology options. So they've been helping to set up events for schools and funding that side of things. One of the most interesting from my side of things, I think, is the Forestry Commission Scotland. It's the largest landowner in Scotland. So it has a massive estate, and it has a huge public events programme, and they've embraced dark sky events as one of the things that they want to host in order to provide something different, particularly for their local communities around forests. A little bit for tourism too, but really it's about having vibrant community events in forest areas. Now, I won't say any more, but it's quite an eclectic mix of organisations. And these are the aims that they're all working to. So first of all, everyone is rallying around this idea of the inspirational value of astronomy in space. That's the thing that absolutely everyone in the partnership has an interest in. Most of us in the partnership have a primary interest in promoting interest in the science and technology subjects. Not a priority for everyone, but it's the majority. We support the dark sky tourism and activities, recreation. And the important thing to say here is that this is, as Albert said, this is not a light pollution campaign, and we're not making it a priority to set up dark sky preserves and places like that. But we want to show the sorts of activities that can take place in those areas when they are established. And the last two is, it's not just about me and one of my colleagues sort of going around trying to do these things. It's very much about creating the networks of people and organisations that can make this happen on a large scale and in a sustained way. Okay, so what do we actually do? Well, it sort of comes down to three very distinct things. We run events for the public and schools. We run projects, which are things really that people can run for themselves once we've shown them what's involved. And we run training events for teachers and other educators. And I'm going to give you a bit more of an insight into each of those three things. So the events that we run for public and schools are built around 5 key activities. And one of the things is we try to keep to these because they're tried and tested. We know they're popular. We've got people who are skilled at delivering them. So just give you an idea of what they involve. Obviously, stargazing. We have a focus on naked eye stargazing, keeping things really simple. The graphic on the left comes from a star chart that we use. I've got a copy in my pocket, I hope. It's funny how you can lose something between the seat and your... but you can. Here we are. So there's a few of these on the desk, and please take as many as you like to hand out at any public events you've got. They're very simple, just a nice thing that people can take away. And I think, importantly, it's something that someone who's picked this up an event can show their parents, their friends, their families, and it spreads the word. It's something that can stimulate conversations well after the event that you've run. Okay, secondly, we do talks, and these are illustrated talks. Astronomy has fantastic images. Short, pithy, fun talks, 15, 20 minutes long. It's not a lecture program that we're offering. Comet making. I don't know if some of you will have seen, I suspect, this activity, but you can using dry ice, water, and a few other ingredients, you can effectively make a real comet on a tabletop. Again, a 20, 30-minute demonstration. Rocket launching is more of a make and do activity, so people make their own sort of cardboard rockets and they're launched from a pressurized air pump. And lastly, Starlab planetarium shows. I guess most of you know them and know how difficult they are to photograph, but there's one looking at the back of this school hall there. So that's always obviously a really popular show for people to see at an event. So those 5 activities make up the core of every event that we run. And at their best, an entire community, particularly in rural areas, becomes involved. So this is at a small community in the Highlands of Scotland, primary school, secondary school, community groups, all involved during a 2-day event, and it culminated with a lantern trail into the local woodlands to do the stargazing. And a second thing we started doing is projects. And we didn't set out initially for this to be a big thing, but it's emerged as a bit more important. The first one that just seemed to almost take off by itself is the Constellation Project. And this is based on the fact that stars are so many light years away. And so if you're, say, on Vega, which I think is 20 light years away, you can imagine yourself being on Vega, looking down here, and what would you see? Well, you wouldn't see a room full of people talking about dark skies, but you'd see what was ever happening on this site 20 years ago before this building was built. So it's a kind of an imaginative time machine to think what you can see by looking down on Earth from different stars in the sky. So that, the idea, the way it runs, is two ways of doing it. The simple way is you take the well-known constellations, and the children in the school will find out how far away the stars are in light years and think about the historical events in their community related to those stars and build up a story of their locality through that constellation. A more complicated way is you decide your interesting events, find out stars in the sky that are the relevant number of light years away, and see if you can make a constellation from it. And that is really hard. But they did actually manage to do it that way with the first time we ran it. 8 schools around the Highlands created this constellation called the Jumping Fish, which was built up that way, from them each school choosing its own star. And it's one of these projects that is very inspirational for the pupils, and we had artists in residence working with the schools as well. And they go and often do all sorts of creative work from that. So it has its roots in the science, but all sorts of different teachers and perspectives on the project can come out of it. So this is artwork, children's drawing of the Northern Lights, and a poem that a child wrote about what it would be like to be on Vega, looking down on her community. And so that was a project that was run with a lot of input from us. This is just one picture of a community on a small island off the west coast of Scotland who we had shown a training workshop how to do this project, and they went off and just did it all by themselves. And they produced a constellation that depicted a Viking ship. But they just ran it entirely themselves, so it didn't need a lot of input from us. The second main project that we've developed is what we call dark sky discovery sites. And this has come about, I think, much more strategically, much more consciously, because although we ran a lot of events in rural areas initially, all the steering group partners really wanted to find ways of reaching audiences in urban areas. And when we talked to funders about how to make this happen, they're particularly interested in engaging people with their local environment in a sustained way. They weren't so keen on us turning up and doing a nice sort of circus show of different acts and entertaining them simply for one evening. They wanted to see if we could find ways of people developing what they would call a sense of ownership or connection with the night sky as part of their local environment. So we came up with the idea of dark sky discovery sites, and it's a sort of an entry-level version of what James was talking about previously, and James's talk was fantastic. I would love to hear more about that. But what we're talking about is asking community groups to nominate the place that, simply as things are, is the best place to go in their community to see the night sky. So it's not a light pollution control scheme in any way, but it's introducing to people to the idea that a darker sky is a valuable thing. And we've got 2 locations so far that have been identified. Newbattle Abbey College is an education college in a small town in the south of Scotland, and Ben Nevis is Scotland's highest mountain, but it's on the edge of a town called Fort William. So the glen between Fort William and Ben Nevis has been nominated by the community groups from the town as their dark sky discovery site. We do training workshops, and this is it's a very important part of what we do, because we want to reach as many people as possible, and what we can reach so many people directly, but running training workshops for teachers and other educators, other potential host venues, enables them to see that actually a lot of what we do is quite simple, and they could probably got many of the skills within the community to do it themselves. And the key workshop we run is called Showing People the Night Sky, where we show them simply how to run stargazing activities for their community. We do other workshops which are more geared to the curriculum and for schools, and we can offer those to teachers at a community, but they probably feature less regularly in the events. It's the middle one that is the core training workshop that we run. This slide is about the programming, because of all those things I've described, they only really work well if you get things happening in the right place at the right time and for the right people. And making that happen is probably one of the most difficult aspects of the program. This slide, you might not be able to see what that sticker actually says, Hopefully you can see that this guy here is standing there in a rain shower with some very happy kids around him, but it's a wet old day. The sticker says, weatherproof, this event will go ahead whatever the weather. And this is a big thing of what we do, is we make sure that the whole event is programmed and marketed in such a way that people can know that it will go ahead and it will be good and it will be fun, and the weather or cloudy skies is not going to be a problem. In rural areas, this is how we do this. And I've highlighted that we've often done this with the Forestry Commission, either directly with them or with some of the community groups they're linked up with. Friday, a small team of 3 or 4 people sets off from Edinburgh or maybe Glasgow and the Central Belt. We're typically having to travel 2 or 3 hours to get to these venues. We run a teacher workshop in the afternoon. In the evening, we run a family stargazing event. Some of the teachers may stay on for that to see how we do it with the public. Saturday morning, we could do nothing. We could have a rest. But we often try to run a community workshop. So it's another version of the workshop, but it might be for informal educators or people in the tourism industry locally who are curious about how they can make more of their dark skies. Another session of daytime activities for family in the afternoon, and another go at stargazing in the evening. Amongst other things, this gives us 2 bites at the cherry in terms of having a clear sky. But it's also about, when you're travelling that far to a community, you want to make sure that you have as big an impact as possible, leave a legacy of people who are inspired and able to do things for themselves. And then, exhausted, we travel home on the Sunday. So that's a rural weekend event, typically. Going back to the urban areas, what we were trying to do was find ways that we could engage groups to work on projects over a period of time rather than just over a particular evening or a particular afternoon. And we also want to work with a different type of organisation to help us do that. So the John Muir Trust is an environmental charity that runs something called the John Muir Award. And this is where pupils go through a certain number of activities to get their badge, if you like. And it's about identifying something in their local environment, and they do some work to conserve it, to understand it, and to share and talk about that part of their environment with their local community. So there's an infrastructure through that award, and what we're showing the John Muir Trust Award leaders is that how they can introduce dark skies in the night sky as part of the way they run that award. And the way we do that is that we run 2 workshops, almost kind of an introductory workshop for the John Muir Award leaders. So we typically have 20 or 30 award leaders for an evening, just to give them a nice gentle introduction to dark skies and reassure them how simple some of the stuff is. The second workshop is a chance to discuss with them, well, how would they make any of this apply in the way they work with their group award participants, and plan the programme. And then weeks 3, 4, and 5 might look like something like this. So we might come along for one evening and do some planetarium shows or something like that, just to get the event groups fired up with the project. The John Muir Award leaders will then work with them in the following sessions to maybe working on finding their local dark sky discovery site, and it could end with a community event, which might be a sort of a shortened version of this, where the award participants are talking to their wider community about what they've done. So 2 sort of kind of like idealised models, but that's basically the way we look to work in rural and urban areas. Behind the scenes to make this happen, we've trained about 50 astronomers, science teachers, science communicators, and researchers to run these events, show them how to use umbrellas. We have the transport. You've got a lot of people and kit to get to places at the right time. So we've got ourselves from the Forestry Commission. They gave us one of their trucks, which is really valuable. It carries, it's got seats for 5 people, and also you can get kit in the back. We've raised a fair amount of money for this to happen over the 3 years that it's been running, and that's enabled us to have a project officer. And that's just absolutely crucial for the things to happen on this scale and this sort of level of success, really. I mean, we could be doing this on a much smaller scale, same ideas, but it's having a project officer in place means that you can really maximise the size of the programme that you're running. Okay. So the key lessons from Scotland that we've learnt along the way, and which we're looking to share through the Dark Sky Discovery Programme, and for you if you're interested in this. First thing is dark skies are an asset. Now, one of the key things is that when this project was first developed, we might not have called it Dark Sky Discovery. We might have called it Cosmic Discovery or Astro Discovery or something like that. For reasons I don't quite remember, I opted for Dark Sky Discovery, and one of the best decisions I made because it seems to have connected the project with all sorts of groups, which has made it turn out the way that it has. And so what I'm saying is that dark skies, or even the idea of dark skies, I mean, we're talking here about situations where they're not really, really dark skies, but people, I think, find the idea of dark skies very exciting, very accessible. And for example, the dark skies activities have seen more media coverage in Year of Astronomy in the UK than any of the other programmes. So the dark skies is a popular idea. You need to have the right mix of events to run a successful family event. It must be a positive experience for people, and you need to have the people who are able to run those activities to a high standard. And we put a lot of emphasis on trying to get that right. And the programming and the way those events come together and the venues you use, also very important. You might want to think we'll run this in our really dark sky location, but that won't work from the customer's point of view. They need to have certain comfort things, so we have to look for venues that are a compromise on the dark sky side of things when we're doing the programming. We've found, and this is a real lesson that we've learned, that the community groups are the best host organisations. We sometimes run events where it's the starting point is with the schools. Sometimes we've run events with a visitor attraction. But when the community group has been the host, then you get the whole community. You get the schools, you get the tourism businesses. So wherever possible, we try to look for community groups to be our host organisation. Outdoor organisations are excellent partners, and this is if I'm talking to a room of astronomers, that's quite a sort of a bit of a new message for them. You must work with the outdoor organisations, the national parks, and these sort of things. For you, I think you know this already, that there's an affinity there amongst these organisations, but it's one that's really worked well for us, and partly because they share all these interests. They know they're interested in the dark skies. A lot of them have event programs. They understand the importance of running events effectively and accessibly. They often are very interested in the links with the local community groups already. So for us, outdoor organisations of one sort or another have been really good partners. Training is really valuable to show people that this is something that's not just you going around doing something for them, but that it can become part of what the local community can do for itself. And be flexible, because we could have gone around the country with a very sort of one-size-fits-all approach to what these events are all about, but every time we've really tried to make it work in the particular location and for the particular groups that we're working with. Okay, so the last couple of slides. How it's all going to work in the UK. Well, we've already set up the UK steering group, which has got all the main astronomy groups in the UK. And I should say that we didn't know that it was going to be something that might run in Ireland, so it is the UK steering group. We'll maybe look at adding some members from Ireland if that's needed. The approach that we're taking is to divide the UK and Ireland up into areas, and we're looking at establishing similar dark sky partnerships to the Scotland one in each area. We've already got 30-plus organisations interested in being part of these partnerships. They've seen some version of this sort of presentation and want to be part of it. And we have funding bids for up to about 200k to make that happen over the next 2 years or so. What's involved for each partnership? Well, it's a sort of 4-stage process, at least as I envisage it, but it could turn out a bit different. The numbers in brackets tell you how far we've got with each of these 12 partnerships. So there are 12 partnerships. First step is to identify a lead organisation. And we've got a strong lead organisation in 8 parts, eight of the partnership areas. We have a meeting with that organisation and other key local organisations to decide really what can this programme mean for your area. And the meeting I had yesterday was effectively that meeting for Northern Ireland and Ireland. But that tries to make clear for everyone to understand is this programme really relevant? Is it going to add something to what you're already doing in this part of the UK? The third step is what we've called startup events, and this is a one-day training workshop where people come together to look at exactly what a dark sky programme in their region might involve. We show them what we do in the morning, and we discuss what they can do in the afternoon. We've run one in the West Midlands, which is this purple region here, and that we've run that as effectively as a pilot just to test this approach, and it was very successful. These people were really enthusiastic about making dark sky events happen in the West Midlands. And the fourth stage is that the partnerships then go off and do these activities for themselves, and they're working independently. The support from the Edinburgh office in all this is we facilitate this whole process. We'll run a national event to bring all the participating organisations together to look at what approach they're taking to everything at the beginning. We'll produce a dark sky manual to distill all the ideas I've sort of described, to provide that as support. We've already got a website for the project to help promote it, various branded materials and things that we can provide centrally. We hope to provide a budget of about 5k for each region to support what they're doing, and to finish up with a roundup event with all the partners coming together across the country to learn the lessons and talk about what happens in the future. And I'll just finish with this last picture. This girl, this picture sums up for me how things can work when it all comes together. She's making her own constellation umbrella, so her own sort of model of the night sky, at an event that is marking the launch of the Glen Nevis Dark Sky Discovery site. And it's an event run entirely by local organisations. We weren't at this event at all. She's doing an activity which will not only give her an understanding of the night sky that, I think will stand a good chance of staying with her through her life, but she's doing it in a way that when she goes home, she's got something to show her friends and her family, her grandparents. So it's really about something that can spread the discussion in the community and build awareness of what the Dark Sky Discovery Site is and what's in the night sky. So that's a kind of an ideal picture of how things can work if all this can come together.
So I'm sure there's a couple of questions I have, Terry.
Dan, I'm very interested in that, and particularly in the fact that you are going out to rural communities rather than to try to provide a facility for people from the urban areas to go out to. And what I'm interested in is, do you go out and seek these communities, or do you invite them to approach you and say, would you come and run an event in our area? What way do you actually select what areas you go to?
I think that's probably where that national partnership is really valuable. So in particular, the Forestry Commission, which divides Scotland up into 14 districts, and that gives us an immediate sort of route into communities and community groups in each of those districts. And so they basically found the groups and the villages where we went to run events. And then in a similar way, the John Muir Trust, although it works a lot in urban areas, it also has connections into rural communities as well. So it's the national partners who find those communities for us.
And do they have to pay for that at all, or is it all from your central funding?
Well, some of they often have two things. Forestry Commission has modest event budgets that they can give to these communities. There's a lot of grants for community groups that they can access, which we can't, for maybe £400, £1,000, which can cover the cost of the event. Some of these community groups are very savvy about getting that sort of money, so it can come together from that side rather than from our core grant side of things.
Yeah, great.
It was an inspiration what I heard, given its range, but given that also one of your sponsors is the Forestry Commission, I'm a little bit worried because they also sponsor what my friends call vanity lighting in the forest, where they light up the forest at night for the sake of doing it to attract the public in, to make them aware of the forest at night. But I feel a great sense of sympathy for the owls and the bats that are going to be compromised. Is there not a sense of conflict within the Forestry Commission?
Yes, there is.
On the one hand, supporting intelligent people like you, and on the other hand, the others.
Yeah, there is a sense of conflict, and they, as we were driving around the country doing this, we would pass Forestry Commission sites that were advertising their light show, as I said, we're not a light completion campaign, but it's clear that as we've been doing this project, they've become more aware of that contradiction. and we haven't pushed them to a particular sort of way of resolving it, but they're much more aware now of that contradiction than they were 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah, last one, John.
It's about funding. Are most of the people going and doing the training, are they paid or are they volunteers?
Paid. So
from the central
yes,
money?
yes, yeah.
But then how many volunteers do you have on around that?
Yeah, okay. The what we call the Dark Sky team is, we've trained 50 people, maybe a little bit more than that. In practice, and this is a sort of one of the wrinkles and the issues that I didn't mention, but the events have probably been delivered by a core group of about 10 or 12 people. And there's various reasons why that happens, some good reasons, but it's actually come down to a core group of 10. And they are mainly people who are from Glasgow Science Centre, science communicators. So they are doing this as part of their paid job.
Right.
So they get some money from the core project. And also another core of people from postgraduates from the observatory and also from Glasgow University. And they get paid a casual rate too. It's quite modest, but it's the way we've always worked. And it's not done on a voluntary basis. So actually most of the activities have been paid at a very relatively modest level, but people have been doing it on a paid basis, with a handful of people who've been involved as volunteer amateur astronomers or university researchers who want to be part of this sort of thing.
And is the funding going to be available in each of those regions there to enable that same structure to be effective? Yeah,
the 5K, as I see it being used, it would be to cover those sort of costs and any other activity and event costs. I think that the bit that we're not realistically able to provide centrally is, I guess, my role or the project officer role in coordination and pulling things together. It has to come from someone within the partner organisations who sees this as something worth doing. I think what that means is the scale of things won't be as big as what we've done in Scotland. It will be on a whatever you can do with 5K scale, rather than maybe as big as we've had in Scotland. But,
okay. If you have any other questions, Mark, you can follow up with Dan afterwards. We were just about 10 minutes behind us. So Dan, thanks very much again for